Hi there, it's Miss Manning again. I'm going to be teaching you Module 5, Lesson 3. We're going to be learning to compose and decompose right rectangular prisms using layers. So for us to do this, we have to think of composing as building and decomposing as breaking it apart. The other thing that's going to be helpful in this lesson is thinking of the different layers that you could split your rectangular prisms into. So the first way that we could split it is like a cake. We could be splitting it along the length of our shape. And if you can imagine a big tall cake with a bunch of different layers on it, that's why we call it decomposing it like a cake. The other way that you could decompose your shape is like a loaf of bread. And so for this, you're going to be decomposing it along the height of our shape. And it looks like you get a bunch of different pieces of bread. And the last way I like to call it in my classroom, slicing it like an Italian loaf of bread, because it's similar to the loaf of bread that we just did, that you're going to be splitting it along the height. But I'm not doing the height of the front face, I'm doing the height of the width side of my shape. For fluency today, we're going to be reviewing the skills from our last two lessons. So for figure E here, we have those floating cubes that we talked about. Those cubes that after building things, we realize there's other cubes sitting underneath. So I want you to go ahead and pause the video and solve for the volume of figure E. Okay, now for figure F, we have to think about yesterday's lesson where we were packing a box full of things. And the other thing to pay attention to is remember not to count those faces, but count the actual whole cube together. So go ahead and pause the video and solve for the volume of figure F. All right, so for our first problem set, I wanted to kind of help you out with what this might look like. So I went ahead and I took our three shapes below our rectangular prisms and I split them our three ways. The first one I sliced like a loaf of bread, or I should say I decomposed it like a loaf of bread, so I have individual slices. On the table there, they want you to tell them how many layers you have. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers in this rectangular prism. And within my rectangular prism, one layer has 4 cubes in it. So if we think of it this way, we have 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. I have 24 total cubes here, which gives me a volume of 24 centimeters cubed. Now, the other way I chose to slice it was like the cake. That's where you're slicing it along the length of our shape. And when I do it this way, I just have 2 layers. I have my red layer and I have my yellow layer. Within one layer, I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. I have 12 cubes. So if you think of the yellow layer having 12 cubes and the red layer having 12 cubes, I should have a total volume of 24 centimeters cubed in this rectangular prism. And the last way to build it is like an Italian loaf of bread. That's that weird one where you're doing it along the height, but it's not of the front of your shape. So again, I have 2 layers here. I have this brown layer here, and on the back side, I have this red layer. So I have 2 layers, and my layers again have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. I have 12 cubes in each layer. So if I have 12 on this side and 12 on this side, I've decomposed it and put it and composed it back together to get a volume of 24 cubic centimeters. I tried to get creative for problem 3 in your problem set and try to think of different building materials that I could find. I found some soup crackers in my cabinet at home, and I built the prism that Marco is talking about, the 1-inch prism by 5 inches by 5 inches. So I only have one layer, that's my 1 inch. It's 5 shapes long, so that's my 5 inches, and 5 shapes wide. That's my other 5 inches. So if he decides to create another layer that's equal to his first layer and put it on top, what will the volume be? And then remember when we explained in our first video about the number of cubes in a layer, you're going to do the same thing here. And you're going to continue doing that for a different number of layers. So for the exit ticket, I want you to remember all the different ways we decompose the shapes. You get to choose. You can choose to decompose it like the cake, where you're decomposing it along the length of the shape. You can decompose it like a loaf of bread, where you're decomposing it along the height of the shape of the front face. Or you can decompose it like the Italian loaf, where you're decomposing along the height of this side face. Whichever way you choose to decompose it, you're going to end up with the same volume. Thanks so much, guys. I had a great time. I hope to see you again soon.